celebrating the storytellers who widen our horizons. Authors on the Air.
The most fun of a book is when you start, because all the possibilities are there. You have this idea that you're going to some magical destination. And that's before you lose your luggage, all the struggle of actually getting to that destination. That's not the fun part. The fun part is dreaming that there is a story here and I'm going to find it.
Tess Gerritsen has just released her 13th book in the acclaimed Rizzoli Isles series. Listen to Me is getting rave reviews for Tess's blend of fascinating characters, quotable dialogue, and plots full of surprises. In Listen to Me, Jane's mother, Angela Rizzoli, spends a lot of time on center stage, and her performance is worthy of a standalone. When we met this week to discuss her books and her career, Tess shared tantalizing details about Angela's role in Listen to Me.
In Listen to Me, we hear from Jane's mother, Angela, is seeing some odd things in her neighborhood. She thinks that she might be in danger. The problem is that her daughter, the homicide cop, doesn't listen to mom. And that is the theme of the book, about how sometimes middle-aged women see things, but we're not listened to. And sometimes we see things that are very real and very dangerous.
This is a sort of coming out party for Angela, isn't it?
She's appeared in the book, but never in her first-person voice. She was in the very first book, and we've watched her be a happy mother, a happy wife, and then maybe halfway through the series, her husband left her for another woman. So now here is Angela trying to find an independent life, learning to be strong, and realizing she's a lot more clever and courageous than she ever realized.
Listen to Me is the 13th entry in this series. What keeps you going?
The only reason I write the next book in this series is I want to see what happens next. What does Jane get? How does she get along with her mother? With Maura, it's how is that romance going on with a Catholic priest? And, all the whole universe of characters becomes like your own little community. And you want to know what happens to them next.
How has Jane evolved over time?
When she was first introduced in The Surgeon, she was not the main character. She was a secondary throwaway character, was supposed to die in that story. But as I was writing her, I began to like her, even though she was a really prickly person. People didn't like her. She was a little bitchy. And I didn't feel the need to make her likable because I assumed she was going to die in that story. But when I got to her death scene, I couldn't do it because I liked her by that point. And then she went on to the second book. And as with a lot of people, as people become happy, they become more likable. And Jane found love. She found marriage. She found motherhood over the course of the next couple of books. And I began to like her more, and I think readers began to like her more because they saw a happy woman.
What was the process that turned Tess Gerritsen into a writer?
The process was I knew I wanted to be a writer when I was 7. It took me years to finally get around to trying it because I went to medical school instead. And I think it's just one foot in front of the other. You one story after another. You keep on producing books, and you find your rhythm, you find your process. And eventually the publishers found me.
From start to finish, how long did it take to create Listen to Me?
About a year. I never expected to write this book. I really thought the Rizzoli Isles series was done at number 12. But as often happens, a character started talking to me, and that was Angela, saying, if you see something, say something. And I thought, what is Angela looking? She's looking out her window. What is she seeing on her street? I want to see what she's seeing. And that launched this whole story.
In the age of social media, the author's brand and the stories we tell become inextricably connected. How have you navigated that?
I never really thought about branding. I never really tried to brand. It's just, it happened. And in fact, when I write my books, I know probably drive my publisher crazy, but I don't stay in one lane. I'm always moving lanes from science fiction to historical to ghost stories even. So for me, it's really all about, I tell the story I want to tell. And I probably should think more about whether it's marketable, but I don't.
And along the way, you haven't been afraid to throw a few change-up standalones into the mix.
Yeah, and it puzzles. It puzzles people. I mean, a couple books ago, I came out with a sexy ghost story, and my readers went, "What the heck is this?" But I had such a good time writing that story, and that is the clue that I'm doing something right, that I'm having a good time.
We all love to write, but we also love to get paid. How do you balance joy with cash flow?
That is a real challenge, because if you were to listen to your publisher or your agent, they want you to be branded. They want you to write the books that have sold before. And that's the same for your readers. Your readers demand the same thing, but different. And how do you keep delivering that and making them happy without you yourself feeling like you're trapped in a box? I like to tell the story about how Conan Doyle killed Sherlock Holmes, and we all know that's why he went over Reichenbach Falls, because Conan Doyle was sick of him. And I understand that frustration for anybody with a long-running series. They want to break out sometimes, and sometimes we don't feel that we can. We can't afford to.
The dialogue in Listen to Me is delightful. How did you learn to write conversation?
Well, you know what? I'm a middle-aged woman. I know what it's like to be in a Scrabble game. So I just imagine these funny neighbors getting together for their Scrabble game, and what do they say? Gossip. Neighbors gossip. They want to find out what is going on with those people across the street. The new neighbors who keep their drapes down and putting bars on their windows. You're going to gossip over that. So I think that's what I was doing, is I was just hearing what it would be like to get together with a bunch of funny friends.
Your books have such authenticity. How do you do your research?
Oh, well, when it's something I don't know about, I have a really extensive library in my own home that has to do with forensics, medical details, textbooks, forensic pathology. So I get a lot of details out of textbooks. If I have a particular question and it's a medical subspecialty, I will pick up the phone and call a doctor and ask him about these details. The truth is, we get things wrong. I always get things wrong. Every writer gets things. I would say my number one thing is firearms. Firearms I often will get wrong, and I will be called on it. But I think that's probably true for a lot of crime writers.
What is Tess Gerritsen's next project?
I'm writing a spy novel. In fact, I just finished it. It's based on my little town. I live in the state of Maine, very small town, and about 30 years ago, I realized that we're full of CIA retirees here, living in the woods, 2 of them on my street, and I began to think about what is it like to be retired from espionage. And so the character came to me of a 60-year-old woman who's left the field and now finds a dead body in her driveway. What does a spy do with that? Is it about their past? So that's the story I just finished writing.
How can people contact you?
Well, they can find me on Twitter at Tess Gerritsen, and they can find me on my website at tessgerritsen.com.
Like every Rizzoli Isles book, Listen to Me reads as well as a standalone and can be a delicious introduction to Tess Gerritsen's world that you'll want to visit again and again. I'm Terry Shepard for Authors on the Air, and I'll see you in the next chapter.